Hello and welcome to the Winners Never Quit podcast. Start your week the right way with a laugh and a dose of motivation. Listen to the stories of our guests, learn from their experiences and how they have built a winner's mindset. Hosted by myself, Jack Jarvis, and if you could like, follow or subscribe to the podcast, I would really, really appreciate it. Today I am joined by a man that needs no introduction, TV chef and all-round legend, Tom Kerridge. Tom, how the devil are you, mate? You
Very
good?
well, thank you, Captain. I'm all right, thank you.
Awesome, mate, awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me, mate. And because I'm a big fan, we're actually going to start this podcast a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I've got some delicious treats, mate, for
I'm
you to
looking at 'em.
enjoy. And what we've got in front of me is a Fire Pot Food spicy pork noodle, a Expedition Food sweet and sour chicken with rice, and then a Thai chicken green curry. Now, this is what I've eaten, and being a absolute master behind the cooker, I want to know your opinion. So I'd like to know which one you want to try first and tell me what you think.
But do you know what the interesting thing about it? The packaging, right? So the packaging is it's not made, it's not sold as in, look at this is delicious to eat. There's no picture on it, friend. There's no serving suggestion.
No, there really isn't.
It looks like, well, it looks like protein-led food. It looks like it's something that you would buy from, I don't know, along with your protein shakes and your creatine and your whatever else. You know what I mean? For your gym material rather than a food substance. So
Yeah.
it looks like, the bright orange packets and it's just got the ingredients and the nutritional information, which ain't very much, to be honest. It tells you what the energy and the carbohydrates, but I can imagine that the freshness vibe that you want from vegetables and all that sort of stuff is lacking. And I've just opened the packet, and this is the sweet and sour chicken.
So this
with
is my
rice.
this was my favourite when I was rowing across the Atlantic. So I'm really
So it's
interested
one big
to
bag
see.
of it, and it's like a bag of.
So Tom compared this to a fancy pot noodle, and Tom's really right. I mean, as much as you want them to be delicious, when you're rowing or doing extreme endurance events, it's all about just getting those calories into you and sustaining your body for as long as possible. So he's chewing down, no gagging yet.
The sweet and sour chicken, right? I mean, it's not bad. It's not enough salt.
Not enough salt.
So seasoning wise, like for flavour, it definitely needs salt.
Let me try a bit.
Definitely needs salt, but it's all right. I mean, it's a bit. I get it as fuel. I see it. Actually, I'll tell you what. The Thai green chicken curry. You open the bag and you look at that. The peas are bright green, which is like a bonus for considering they would have been.
I mean, I still love that. I think that's great. So you talk about seasoning.
That's better. It's
Yeah,
more
the
salt content
Thai
in
green
that.
curry, yeah.
I think that's. Do you know what? They're not bad. They're nowhere near as bad as you think they're going to be. I mean, bad is the wrong word. They're perfectly edible. There's nothing wrong with them. Like, if they were sold in a shop, can you buy them in a shop?
Yeah, you buy them online. Expedition Foods is actually a UK, they're both UK-based companies. Firepot down in Dorset, Expedition Foods up in Yorkshire.
I mean, they are. This doesn't look so great. I've got to be honest, right? So this one now, the spicy pork noodles. So the noodles aren't really noodly. They're all broken up quite badly. Okay, that's my worst one. Okay. That one's not so good. I'm not going back for seconds on that. So that one, however, I get, it takes up very little room in an expedition pack. And in terms of flavour-wise, it's nowhere. They're way better than you think. Like, listen, you're stuck in the middle of the ocean or the Atlantic or wherever, right? And you're on your own in a boat. You're having that. There's flavour to them. They taste. They're not. It's not depressing in any way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's actually quite. I could see you be looking forward to your meal.
Yeah, 100%,
You know,
and I
so
was.
which is great. You could look forward to eating one of those. They're nowhere near as bad as I thought they'd be. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd eat them.
And this is they've come on so much, and I always talk about this because people often like first impressions. They're like, how did you survive on them for 111 days? Well, for a start, I had nothing else. I wasn't going to nip down the local M&S.
Yeah.
And also, if you frame your mindset and instead of thinking about yourself, think about the boys and girls that did it in the 60s. Mate, they were on tins of Spam.
Yeah. You imagine the difference between, like, post-war food or rationing, or you think that that's where people, the sort of stuff that you survive on. Actually, that's not survival food. That's actually very tasty. It's really nice. And although it is it's worked through. There's nutritional balance in that. There is flavour, and you can see that that's been developed by chefs in kitchens with an understanding of trying to put balance of flavour and ingredients and spicing and seasoning together. It isn't just, okay, this is fuel, that'll do, get them out there.
Yeah.
Actually, they're well thought through, and they are super tasty. So I can imagine how actually you were looking forward to eating that. I mean, 800 calories. How many calories a day were you burning?
Probably about 8,000.
So how many of those could you actually get through?
So this was one of the problems on my row. I didn't nail my nutrition down.
Right.
I should have taken 4,000 calorie meals per day, and I've actually got so this was what I would pull out from a hatch. They'd be taped together.
Right.
So I sort of underestimated. I was like, I've got 3 meals, that's 3,000 calories. But if you look there, I mean, only this one is 1,000 calories. Those two are about, 700, I think, 500?
Yeah, 500. So you actually did your maths wrong.
Yeah, really wrong. Just a bit of laziness. I was like, oh, right.
So you could have done a whole nother packet. That you could have done an extra one of those.
Yeah,
But would that have taken up too much room, or would it have been all right?
No, it probably would have been all right. I had a bit of room on the boat spare.
So when you do it again,
yeah. So when me and you do the Indian Ocean,
whoa.
This is people ask me why I started the podcast, and it's to try and find someone to row the Indian Ocean. It's all a big scam, mate. I'll be happy to sign up.
How long would the Indian Ocean take?
So it's the same distance.
Which is?
It's about 4,600 miles.
Yeah.
Nautical miles as well, so probably about 5,000 land miles. But what makes it not harder, but different set of challenges is the Atlantic has a very sort of consistent weather systems.
Yeah.
As in, if you go the right time of year, you'll get the trade winds in the South Atlantic the same way. If you go in the summer, the northern hemisphere,
yeah,
you'll get the Gulf Stream and be sort of pushed along. It's just a real mix. You've got winds coming from the north, the Antarctic winds, so pushing you that way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, and also the Indian Ocean, whereas the Atlantic is landmass, deep water, landmass. In the Indian, you have, really different depths.
Right.
So you might go from 10, 20 miles deep to 500 meters deep. And that water, obviously, Tom, has got to go somewhere. And it's not going down, is it? Into the bedrock. It's going up.
Yeah.
So it's a real
wavy.
Yeah.
Real all over the place.
Oh yeah. It's a real sort of.
So how long will that take you?
Us.
How long will that take us?
So probably, I reckon me, you, Warren, get him involved, because he's been messaging me about a challenge. Probably, I reckon, as a pair, again, 90 days. But then I thought my Atlantic row was going to be 90 days. It ended up taking me 111.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 90 days. So maybe 100.
Yeah,
110.
Take 140 days worth of food and
then see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite full on. And when, in all honesty, when is the idea, the challenge? When do you think you'll take that on?
So not next season. Probably be 2025. But you go in the summer.
Right.
It's a little bit different. So I set off in December for my Atlantic row. So you'd look to set or have the boat in Perth or somewhere on the west coast of Australia, and then look to go anywhere between sort of March.
And how many miles a day do you row?
How many miles? So I think my average was 40 miles a day.
God, that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's that? 8 hours of rowing?
No, I was doing 14 hours of rowing a day.
14 hours. of rowing.
Yeah. So I'd wake up at 5, start rowing at 5:30, 2.5 hours on, an hour break. 4 hours on, an hour break, 3 hours on, an hour break, and then 4.5 hours to finish the day. It's nuts. When I sit here, right,
and say it out loud.
Yeah, and snooze my alarm this morning, I was like, I'll get up at 6:30 instead of 6.
Yeah.
It's mental. But when you're in it, and you're living and breathing it, and your body is adapted to the food, to the lack of sleep, to the isolationism, you just do. That's as simple as it is. Because when you're put in that situation, Tom, you've got no other option. I was going to fucking live. I wasn't going to perish out there. I was going to be successful. So it was do. That was the only option. There was no.
The mindset is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Like, finding that zone. And did you find that zone day one when you left, or was it like when you left the first pack? Were you in it then, or did it take 3 or 4 days, or a week or 2, or just go?
So it takes about 5 days. And funny, I remember. So it was 2 a.m. when my alarm went off because I go out with the tide. No need to make it harder for yourself. You're
No.
going to be out there for 90 days, I thought,
Yeah.
at this point. So it's 2 a.m. I'm walking through Lagos. Not a soul there. It's, December. It's the season's over. Get my boat. I'm pushing off. And I just remember thinking, fucking hell, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
That is sort of when it dawns on you. And then you watch the land disappear. And then you're just like, right, I am in this now. And it takes 5 days. You're getting used to it. And I never thought, I couldn't quit because too many people knew about it, Tom.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I was like, I've either got to do this or I'll have to die out here. I couldn't face the shame.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, this is shit. Because the first day was good. I did 50 odd miles. Second day was only like 27, 28.
Right.
And I was like, oh shit, this could take a little bit longer than I thought. But after that first 5 days, you're just in it. Like I said, your body adapts. You get used to the isolation. And the biggest thing I missed, Tom, was food.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mum, Dad, if you're listening.
Yeah.
You just get used to it. And again, you try and frame your mindset and think about how tough it could be. I was lucky I had 2 satellite phones, had a BGAN, so a small handheld satellite, so I could send and receive a WhatsApp. When you tell people you have internet, so you're watching the football, were you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to take, 3 o'clock Saturday, have that off.
Yeah.
So, I was very, if I needed to speak to someone, I could.
Yeah.
And again, I always used to say to myself, I volunteered to be here. No one put a gun to my
no,
head.
no one's made you. Yeah. This is your choice. You've chosen.
Stop
to
feeling
do
sorry for yourself, Jack.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, you got to think why I was doing it. Obviously, I wanted to get the world record and be the first person to do that route. But ultimately, I was raising money for my granddad who passed away of a brain tumour.
Yeah.
People were really, their support was incredible. I was like, how can I quit? My best mate's donated 300 quid.
Yeah.
And my granddad battled a brain tumour.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be here so you can deal with the sore hands and the sore buttocks.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I won't show you those pictures,
No,
mate.
not.
The food was enough.
There's no need to look at pictures of sore asses, mate.
But Tom, enough about, and I'm sure we can go back to the road, but obviously I'm here to learn a little bit more about you, and I would like to open the questions with, all sounds a bit formal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where is it? Where's the money? I'd like to open the question with, how do you define winning in your life?
I don't know, it's quite weird. So when I look at what we've done and what we achieved, and I look back at, and then what's going on with the business and what's happened in my life, I've never set out with any ambition. So I've always been, because people, and I'm sure the conversations that I've had and other interviews and whatever else, and you look at it and people deem it as what you do is very successful. And in the world of, I suppose, restaurants and hospitality and pubs and that, and you look at it and go, yeah, I mean, we've stood the test of time, we've done very well, we've achieved accolades, we've done all of those things, but they weren't anything that I didn't set out to do that. It was just, there wasn't an ambition and a drive and a thing. It was always to just be a bit better every day. And it comes from a personal, I think it's just in you. People that achieve stuff and do things, and top business people, I'm sure you've interviewed many, will sit there and go, actually, they don't necessarily see themselves of what they've done is a success, or it might be successful, but actually every day there's the fear of it crumbling. There's every day of it not. Every day you worry that the phone isn't going to ring. Every day is a constant battle. Every day there's that slight little nervousness in your stomach about, if this isn't working, what do I do to get it better? How do I get it? So it's a relentless charge of trying to improve yourself, your outlook, what you're trying to do every day. And also, I think a lot of it comes down to your own moral compass of where you sit, of like, work hard, be nice, and then have respect for people. Yeah. But at the same point, you have to have your own. You have to have your own sense of direction and determination. But where it's going, there's never been an end point for me. There's never like, okay, this is where we're going to get to, and then we'll stop. It's always just relentlessly trying to improve little bits, including yourself, your own mental state, or your own personal health, or your own personal position that you find yourself in. Always trying to find little improvements. Never sitting back on your laurels and thinking that it's all okay. So that drive for, I don't know, success isn't something that is. There's no end goal. It's just trying to be a bit better, and also things that are fun. So you're talking about rowing the Indian Ocean, right? everything about that is not fun, but actually the idea of it, you're going, actually it is fun. It's a challenge. It's something. When I come through it, you'll have a buzz. You'll have great days. You see that as a fun thing to do. Not necessarily. It's not like jumping up and down on a trampoline, but it is like. But at the end, you get
and
the endorphins, the process. This is what you're seeing as fun. This is your enthusiasm for it and whatever. And then the point is going, well, I might break a world record by doing it, or I might get. They're all added things. You're not looking at records to break necessarily. You're looking at things to do that go. You're talking about your mate who's running the length of Africa. You're a bit jealous.
Yeah.
You go. You're not because it's just because that sounds like a really cool thing to do. So. Our drive and the way we do business as well, or I do business, the way that I look at what we're going to do as a company is probably the wrong way of doing it, because I don't look at bottom line, I don't look at P&Ls, I don't look at, yes, of course they all have to work, and of course they all have to sit into a budget, otherwise it doesn't make sense, that you wouldn't do it. But at the same point, the first question is, does this sound like fun? Should we do it? Is it great? Like, never do we question how hard it's going to be or whatever. It's just like, is this going to be an experience? And those are the things that I think you should jump into and buy into. It's also, I think, we operate, you don't, I don't, but most people, we operate on it's a 7-day week, right? And a lot of people will work 5 days to have the 2 days off, right? So many people find themselves working in jobs for 5 days to earn money to then enjoy their 2 days off, which I just think is just like, well, surely that's the wrong way around. It's got to be 5 days of work where you can earn the money, but surely you should just be doing something that you like and not be I'm not materialistic. I'm not money motivated. I have nice things. I've bought nice stuff because I've been able to afford it but that's not the motivation. It's always just been about
a byproduct.
Exactly. So it's always been about the focus of going, I'm very lucky that as an 18-year-old, I went into a kitchen and thought, this is an industry for me. I absolutely love it. Not once do I question how many hours I worked all the way through to this point. Not once do I question what days I've got to do. I do a little bit more now because I'm a bit older and I've got a family and whatever, but you just go with, this is great. You live a life. What you do defines you, not what you're doing to then have 2 days off at the weekend. And I think those are also quite key factors in where most people are successful, or what they will deem as success isn't about necessarily monetary value. It's about essentially, are they happy in what they're doing? And if you operate at 80% happiness, that's a pretty good space to be in it, because no one's 100% happy all the time, because you're not. Even if you love your job,
that's an A-star in an exam, isn't it?
Yeah. And even if you love your job and your life and your work, you will still have, I don't know, a shit day at work. You will still be let down by a supplier. You will still have an issue with, I don't know, whatever. You might have an argument with your girlfriend. You may have a whatever. You love your girlfriend very much, but you've had a falling out over, I don't know, where the Hoover was, or like, do you know what I mean? That's a shit day. But you still love what do you know what I mean? It's all of those things. So you could operate, if you operate around about 80-85%, or like on a hugely positive vibe. That's a pretty good space to be, I think.
I remember I listened to a podcast about a guy that has a podcast. It's a Liverpool one, and he says, I don't make as much money as I used to. I used to manage restaurants, but my job now is talking about Liverpool Football Club. He was like, I genuinely do. And if you find something you love, you never work a day in your life. And I really. And as I'm transitioning out of the army, that's what I'm looking for. Because like you said, when I was on that boat, I didn't fucking miss any of my nice things. Balenciaga T-shirts. I got this lovely Land Rover Discovery from Jardine Motors. I didn't miss that, as nice as it was. And if you are listening, I'd love to have it back.
Yeah.
But, I missed my friends and my family. So I totally understand where that comes from, Tom.
And if you're lucky enough to find that early doors and recognise that that's what actually makes you happy. But also there are some people out there that are motivated by money, and they are motivated by business, and that is what makes them happy. The people that, if you look at someone like, I don't know, Alan Sugar, for example, someone who's a multi-millionaire that has made his money, that makes him happy because he smashes business. That's what drives him. That's what excites him. If that is your motivational force, that's great. But you shouldn't be jumping into that world just to be making money because you think that money makes you happy. Yeah. Like, that's not what makes you happy.
You must know a lot of rich people that are pretty miserable.
Yeah, well, there's loads of people. You see, you see loads of it. You see loads of it, that people that are successful, people that have done what you would deem from the outside, you look at them and they've got a nice, great big house and they've got whatever, but they hate their job. They have a Sunday night before, they're going to bed at 9 o'clock at night because they've got to get up at 5 to get on a commuter train to get into whatever else, to go and earn their 200 grand a year plus or whatever they're doing. And they go, and their life is just like, God, this is, they have a downer on a Sunday night
Yeah.
because they know they got that Monday morning feeling. Like, that isn't how to live a life, is it? You
No.
should be. But it is easier to say that if you're in a position where you are quite successful. It is easier to say that because some people got, like, I can't afford this, I can't afford that, we can't afford to pay the mortgage, we're not a homeowner, we got kids that are hungry, you got to whatever. You have to find that balance, because not everybody can make themselves happy by just doing what they want. You have to find that balance, don't you?
Yeah, and it is a fine line to walk, because I'm in a good position now. I've got no kids, no wife or anything like that, so I can afford to leave the army.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of lads that are in the army now, and they still love it, but they haven't got that option, because they have got to provide.
Yeah, you get caught. They're caught in a circle. They love the army. They want to go and do something else, but actually, how do they earn the same sort of money or the lifestyle or where they've got to? And it is, you get caught in this kind of circle, and you see it happens with so many different people across the board. But I think a lot of that should come down to the education system. It comes back into schooling. So we talk about you see the government talking about everyone having to do maths until they're 18 and do whatever. That's not that wasn't for me.
No,
it wasn't for you. That's why you joined the army. It's like, there's lots of people that are hugely positive, hard-working, creative, running vocational-led businesses that are employing vocational-led people. That doing maths till you're 18 is irrelevant. It's about getting up and doing stuff. And we should be encouraging kids a lot more to follow their heart, do what they want. But the one thing we have to teach them is a work ethic. No matter what it is, you have to work hard. Nothing comes for free. You don't row across like the globe without having to work hard, train hard, focus on it, go through a load of shit. You don't win 2 Michelin stars, but it's not just fun. It's a lot of shit you have to wade through. You have to, it's a work ethic. But if you work and you drive yourself for that work ethic, you can achieve anything, no matter what chosen career it is. And I think sometimes we miss that point of going, actually it's about a work ethic, not about ticking boxes of getting particular grades and GCSEs and A levels and I don't know, degrees and then postgraduate degrees and all of these sorts of things, because that doesn't lend to happiness. That just lends to you've just got lots of numbers and letters after your name and ticked a load of boxes. That still doesn't make you happy.
Yeah, going back to maths, how many times have you used algebra since you left school?
Never.
Yeah, exactly.
Never. Although you do use kind of like fractions, or you do use maths in a lot of way of working out when you run a business. Understanding gross profit margins and getting that, but the initial part, you don't have to do that. You have to be able to cook.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You have to be able to cook. And then you can work through that as you get older throughout the kitchens, and you understand. You have to start taking an understanding of it. But the reality of it is that if we taught a lot more in the terms of work ethic rather than actually, exam status, you get a lot more out of a lot of younger children, a lot of kids, a lot of youth and young adults that are coming out into society that at the minute it feels that the focus that if you don't get your exams, you're not going to make a success. Well, that's completely untrue. There's two people sat across this table that have done successful things and done quite, because they've just worked hard.
Didn't go to college, didn't go to university.
Exactly.
So we're talking about it there. Where did this passion for cooking come from, mate?
It was an 18-year-old. I went into a kitchen. I needed money. So I literally went in to wash up. And I was very, very lucky that all of a sudden there was an industry that grabbed me, and the excitement of it, the left field way of way of life. That you work weekends, you work in the evenings. My mates left school same as me. One followed his heart and went into working in theatre, actually musical theatre, and he's now an agent. Another one went off to play professional rugby and is now a head coach at a top team. So he played his whole career. So the three of us that were good mates followed our vocational hearts, and there was others that just went on to building sites. Some went off to college. Not many went to university at the school I went to, and then a lot of them just got kind of lost in this working Monday to Friday, then go out on a Friday night, Saturday night on the lash, Sunday chill, bit of Sunday lunch with the family, and then back to work on a Monday. That kind of get into that rhythm. And there was three of us that didn't follow that and just wanted to go with whatever we wanted to do. And I just went into a kitchen and thought, actually, this vibe, this excitement, the space that it is brilliant. The people that you're surrounded by, there's energy, there's an excitement about it, there's adrenaline, there's there's deadlines, there's lunch and dinner, there's things that you've got to get ready for. There's there's waiting staff. I really like the juxtaposition as well of the people that work in hospitality. A lot of them have come from backgrounds like mine or wherever, and it's always actually the most embracive, eclectic cultural mix of people in hospitality from everywhere. So it's global from all over Europe and the world. It doesn't matter. It's the most embracing. It doesn't matter on race, religion, sexuality. Like none of it matters. You're in a kitchen. You're in a space.
It's who can make good food.
And it's a really good buzz. And it's also it's a bit like a pirate ship. There's lots of like naughty boys and girls in there that are slightly lost by society, that have then found themselves in a place with fire and knives and like an environment that's buzzing. But it also has structure, it has discipline, it has there are deadlines, and it's run by a head chef and a sous chef, and it's very easy to understand that you start at the bottom. You might be a kitchen porter, you might be a commis chef, and then you're learning. There's a career progression. It's very easy, it's very clear, it's very defined to understand where you go. It has discipline, but it also has excitement. You never know. Not every service is the same. Not everything changes. Every day is a different day, and it's also, there's so much to learn. Food is just such a huge and vast subject. It never ends. Yeah. It's never ending. It's never ever ending. It's affected by fashion. It's affected by trends. Great cities. You can travel the world. There's so many things that all of a sudden it becomes fucking hell. This is such an open door from coming from a small closed school environment, which is why hospitality is great, I think, because so many people go through it. Loads of your friends, I'm sure, have understood it, have been in it, worked in a bar or a coffee shop, or work in a hotel, or have washed up, or have done, you get top surgeons, and you get lawyers, and you get all sorts of different people whose first actual job has been working in a student union bar, or has been hospitality is that first place where people connect. So your peer group normally, when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, is the people that are all your age, probably like-minded. The parenting and the schooling is the same. And your connection and your only form of discipline is necessarily the teacher or the lecturer that's above you. All of a sudden you go into a work environment, and your equal may be 10, 15 years older than you, or maybe come from a completely different country and their second language is English, and all of a sudden it opens this whole world, and then you meet guests and customers who are completely different. So all of a sudden your world, this door opens into this wonderful kind of embracive society behind the scenes, but at the front your eyes are completely open to so much, and it becomes a really exciting industry to be in. And some people will get it and learn communication skills, learn to be able to talk to customers. Now, whether that's a family with the kids that have come through the door, or whether it's an old couple that's celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, or whether you gauge, you learn how to speak to people, you communicate. And so much comes through hospitality in terms of communication and setting people up for life that don't necessarily stay in the industry, but they might spend 2 or 3 years whilst they're at university doing it, that when they look back now as 50-year-olds, they'll see that those are foundations to be able to communicate and talk that comes out of it. And it's an industry that is incredibly exciting for that point of view.
So my grandma and granddad used to own a pub, so my first job was an underwater ceramic technician. Used to wash dishes up in their pub.
I love that.
And I loved it, but it's funny you say about the excitement, because I don't know if you've got a midweek shift, maybe 2 tickets, and it's boring. But mate, on like a Friday, Saturday night, when the pub's buzzing, there's like 3 or 4 tickets on all the time. You get one straight, there's another one replaces it. There is a buzz, mate, and I love it, and I can see why people. You think about me, rode the Atlantic, but I still found that like a different kind of buzz, and I fucking loved it.
Yeah,
and it's so true. Everything you say, mate, I totally agree with.
Yeah, it's not as extreme as that. You're not going. You're not going to die in a kitchen. You're not on your own, and you're not going to eat like freeze-dried food like that. There might. Be
I don't know. You might die in the kitchen when you drop a special, mate. The head chef's winging a meat hammer at you. Oh, that's happened to me a few times.
But but you do get similar sort of buzzes. The way that I look at it is, it's a bit like a sportsman is a professional sport. Like, you have to train, you have to understand, you have to have all your prep work done, you have to have everything in line to understand how you're going to attack service. But then when you get into service, it's a bit like going into a game. You're not quite sure what's going to happen. You've got a game plan, you understand it, but you have to be able to adapt and move, and you get that kind of adrenaline, you get that kick. It's not quite the same as, I'm sure, as playing in Wembley or whatever, but that kind of energy that you get is good, and then you get it twice a day, and you get it for lunch and dinner, and you get a buzz out of it. And if you enjoy that kind of environment and that pressure, then it's a great workspace to be in. A lot of people these days, I mean, people are scared of putting themselves under pressure. People are scared of actually going, oh, I'm not, it's not really the world for me. But actually, you gain so much by pushing yourself, by, better than anybody, if your comfort zone is like that big, a small little circle, but you step out of it, then the next, and you deal with it, it grows. And every time you do something that's not comfortable, but you get it right, but it's also good to get it wrong. Like, mistakes are amazing. They're the best things to learn from, because if you don't make mistakes, how are you ever going to grow? You can't just be good at everything. You're just not born brilliant at fucking everything.
Yeah, you're not.
You have to have a go at stuff to understand what's gone wrong, and then what happened that time. How do I make that sure that doesn't happen the next time? And, that kind of personal and professional growth, no matter what you do in terms of life outlook, is so, so important. And that's probably one of the things that we're most proud of in our company and our business, that we've got people that have been with us for like 16 years plus, that have grown with us as a company and have gone on to be head chefs and front of house managers and general managers and all those sort of spaces, win Michelin stars for themselves, that because we encourage people to make mistakes, take responsibility for something, do it. It's not just about me, it's about you. But you have to recognise in them that they have that sense of self, understand the DNA of your business, but they also have their own self-drive for personal progression, for their personal standards that they want to attain, that they want to hit. So if you can find those people and they all mix together, and then you allow them to go on and do it, then you can grow, your company can grow, everything can grow, and everyone benefits from that. So mistakes are one of the most important parts of a business, because they're never a mistake if you grow from it. They're just a learning curve. It's just something that you learn.
When did you go from working in the kitchen, being a chef, to thinking, right, I want to start my own business, opening your own restaurants? And tell us about that.
So we opened the Hand of Flowers over 18 years ago, and it was so my wife's an artist, so she's self-employed. Well, she works as a technician for a very famous artist called Sir Anthony Caro. For people in the art world, they'll know who that is. He's a big sculptor. There's Sir Henry Moore, Sir Anthony Caro, who's part of. So Beth worked for him for around about 8 or 9 years as a technician and building stuff for him whilst having her own studio. But we wanted to get to a point where I could cook, she can make uncompromised art without it having to be necessarily commission led or whatever. And you go, okay, how do we get to that point? So the idea was, well, we'll open a business. We were looking. I was working somewhere. I won a Michelin star in a restaurant somewhere, and then it was like, it's just not right.
Tom, how can you be so blasé about that? I love that. I won a Michelin star.
I'd worked as in Michelin star restaurants pretty much most of my career. It was a head chef's position. We maintained the Michelin star. We won it. It was great, but it was somebody else's restaurant. Okay. And I was like, looking
wasn't your baby.
No, and I was looking for a move and Beth said, look, if you're going to go and do 100-hour weeks, you may as well do it for yourself rather than. Which was great. Okay, let's do it. But the biggest fear, and it was the biggest fear that I'll always remember, is the point of going, when you're an employee, you know what your salary is, you know how much you earn, you rent or buy a house and get your mortgage rates for that, you get your phone tariff for whatever it is, you recognise whether you can or can't afford. There's somebody at the door.
Yeah, someone at the door.
You recognise whether you can or can't buy Sky Telly. You know if this weekend you can go out for a curry and go to the cinema. You know how much money you're earning. Do you know what I mean? That's it. The moment you it's safe. The moment you become self-employed, it's gone. It disappears, right? All of a sudden, there's no understanding how much money you're going to get. You've risked everything. You risk the whole lot. And that was the biggest fear of just going, actually, I'm just jumping off here. I'm just all the safety of what I earn, which wasn't massive, but it was a salary. And you go, we're now dumping that and we're now going to attack. We're just going to have a go at making it. And then in your head, you go, well, if we make money, it's ours. We do all right. If we don't, well, I mean, that's the risk factor. And then that feeling from day one, that's the one that I still have now, 18 and a half years later. It's still the same fear, still the same big thing. But we have, and I think that's what drives you.
You still have that now, even though you've been as successful as you are.
Every fucking day. Every day.
Because when I told, my grandma, everyone's been like, oh, Tom Kerridge, I love him. Do you know what I mean? So for you to say, oh, I still have fear, even though, and you must pick up on the atmospherics. Like, no one I've said is like, oh, I think Tom Kerridge is a bit of a knob. Like, everyone seems to really like you.
Well, I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes on Twitter there's a load of dickheads, but but
in their Transformers pajamas, mate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, you get thick skin as a restaurateur. You get thick skin anyway because people have always got some form of platform to criticise or moan about stuff. Or, like restaurants and sports are the two most criticised things by people who don't understand them across the world. Like, people will watch football and go, he's shit, he is. He's not shit, he's a Premier League footballer, all right? Okay, maybe that
as they're in their local working men's club, mate. Yeah,
exactly. As they're sat there watching it on the telly, have they got their, after they've had their 8th pint and they're going for a kebab.
John Smiths.
They're moaning at someone who might have one glass of white wine a month, who's a prime athlete, who's running around, who once couldn't control a ball that came a sphere that came at him at 70 miles an hour across the ball. He didn't control it first time properly once. He goes, he's shit. Yeah. He's not fucking shit, right? He's way better than what you do. Like, he's not. So sports people get moaned at the whole time because it's visual and it's there and people are in it. And it's the same as restaurants. People will go there and go, oh, yeah, it's not as good as that. And they go, and it comes from, and sometimes sports people do get it wrong. You can see people's heads have gone and they're not having a great game and whatever. And also it's the same as restaurants. Sometimes we are only human, but it is your profession and sometimes things
Sometimes
go
the waiter
wrong.
Drops a special on the floor and it can't be helped.
Exactly. But they're not shit. They've just made a mistake. And there's the difference between the two things that people don't quite see. So you end up getting a thick skin because you have to take a lot of it with a pinch of salt. Of course you take criticism, of course you understand, and we always want people to get it right. Sportsmen always want to win, right? They always want to win. They always want to make sure that the crowd or their fans have been entertained, they've had a great time. Restaurateurs are the same. You always want people to have a brilliant time. You don't want people to come to a restaurant and have a shit time. It's ridiculous to think that people will think that we genuinely want everyone to have a brilliant time, because then they'll tell their friends and then they come back. From a business point of view, we want to make sure you have a nice time. Do you know what I mean? So,
I wanted your food to be cold, mate.
Yeah, exactly. It's
how stupid.
Yeah. So mistakes are made. So it's understanding, listening, adapting, controlling it, but taking it all with a pinch of salt, because you also have to go, actually, deep down, this is my profession, this is what I do, I know what I'm doing, and if these are wrong, I know when we've got it wrong, right? I know when we've got it wrong. We'll make it right, don't worry. And the rest of the time, you have to understand that. You have to be your own biggest critic. So you take things with a pinch of salt, and you go, okay, and you learn from it. But then also, I do think that because people don't quite understand the business and they see that you're on the telly and you see that the restaurant might be busy or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that it makes money, right? It doesn't mean, because we expand and we grow and because we're constantly adapting and moving. We have not once sat still over 18.5 years. We've constantly opened a different place and opened that. We've opened spaces that have worked and not worked. We've lost money on this. We've traded through pandemics and lost an absolute shitload. We've got to the other side. There's still huge amount of company debt. There's personal losses that throughout the pandemic have been catastrophic and huge. People don't see that. So you put on a front and you're the thing and you're the guy in the telly and sells books and everyone just assumes that makes fucking shitloads. But actually a lot of that comes back and then has to go back into business, and that has to go into that and pay off that debt. And most things are operating at just above break even,
above the margins,
or break even. And then there's a couple of them. As a group, as a bigger thing, there'll be some that make money, there'll be some that are in massive losses, and then in between the two. So you're constantly living this fear of trying to get, right, what have I got to balance with that? How am I going to do that? There's over 200 people. There's 5 restaurants. There's some that are moving and changing. There's ones that are opening. There's other ones that we've closed. And there's always, it's not just a very simple equation, but people only see the simplicity of it. They don't see the bigger picture. So that fear is there every day.
Yeah. How could you talk about pressure? And something you've been quite vocal on is the cost of living.
Yeah.
And I can sense maybe people go, oh, Tom Kerridge, books, loads of restaurants, like you said. How do you deal with pressure, like the pressure of the cost of living, and how do you personally manage that?
Well, it's quite difficult. The reason why I get involved hugely in campaigning for things like free school meals, working on the full-time meals campaign with Marcus, trying to push budget-style recipes and things that people can cook at home, and also trying to get across the understanding of the hospitality industry, the issues that it might face with the energy crisis that is huge, utility bills that are coming into businesses that where the increase percentage wise, our for Hand of Flower's yearly bill for energy was electricity was £65,000 a year, which is
It's a joke.
punchy. But the first quote, when it all kicked off, the first quote was it gone from 65 to 350 grand a year. Well, that's it. It's done. Business is done. So we didn't. But you can't buy it. But if you think you're a small little pub, your local pub where the landlord lives upstairs, that he might make 30 grand a year and go on holiday once to Lanzarote in January. Okay, that 30 grand. If his energy bill is £20,000 a year, but it now goes to 80. Right.
Where's that money coming from?
But that's it. That's it. It's done.
There's
like,
no
his
magical
wages
fucking
gone.
money tree.
It's not. It's not there, and it's gone. So, I can be vocal about it because people ask me. I find that point. So you've got to say, and then you get people that have a go at you, going, "Well, champagne socialism. He's all right. He's like, yeah, okay. Financially, personally, I can be fine." But I run businesses. Now, those businesses aren't charities. So those 200 people that are employed, we can keep them going for a point in a period if they're making loss, but there will come a point where you go, actually, we have to shut this because it kills everything else. So you go, well, and then if you close all your businesses, that's 200 people that are then made redundant or whatever. Like, you have to be able to go with trying to drive and get an understanding and using your voice in a good way. And then also the cost of living crisis and the thing, how it affects there's kids, there's people that are on universal credit. There's 800,000 kids whose parents qualify for universal credit, but they don't get free school meals because there's another means testing program that they have to go through. Now, because they qualify for universal credit, they don't get free school meals. But then they're already from the most vulnerable areas of society. We've already worked out that these people need financial help that are coming from the state and the government. Well, why are their kids not? Because their kids are only going to get sent to school with not nutritionally balanced, not right meals, and the bigger thing, or no meals at all. So we need to get a much bigger, stronger, fairer understanding of society from ground level, from working people. My background is a single parent family. My mum, there's myself and my brother. I grew up on an estate in Gloucester. My mum had 2 jobs. I understand the process, what those people are going through my dedication of hard work to being a very lucky position that I found a vocational job that I've done all right at and I've built it over 32 years and got to this point. Doesn't mean to say just because I personally have a disposable income or a cash that I'm all right with, doesn't mean to say I lose contact or care for what's happened for those people. It's ridiculous. We should all live in a society where we want better food education, better food, less poverty, less child poverty in particular. And then you go a transportation system that works, an education system that works, an NHS that is right. There's nothing wrong with wanting all of that for everybody, even if yourself, you've got to the point where you don't necessarily have to worry about that.
Yeah, and I totally understand, because I think the Army's brilliant at that, with introducing you with lads or lasses that aren't from similar backgrounds to yourself. And you talk about not nutritional meals. So I was very lucky. My mum and dad split up, but was loved. I never wanted for anything. There was always food on the table when on holiday. But one of my mates was like, yeah, it wasn't uncommon for us to have ketchup sandwiches because we had nothing else. We just had bread. And he was like, I was just like, that never happened to me. I never would have. He was like, yeah, we just have ketchup butties.
Yeah.
And you realise then that it's not fucking ridiculous to want every kid to have free school meals, especially when we're giving, 40 billion, was it, to in missold PPE?
Oh, it's unbelievable. The question marks about where money comes from, where it goes, and what's seen as being important.
No one's been held accountable for that.
Yeah, it's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's unreal. It makes me so angry that you look at it and you look at what it could be built on. The problem is that we live in a society, I don't want to make it political point, but we are in a world where the people that are in power right now are empowering. So as a business owner, I understand some form of conservative policies and why you encourage businesses to do well, because if businesses do well,
they employ people.
Yeah. But those businesses won't do well if you haven't got a workforce. It has to be built from the ground up. You have to have a workforce that are paid enough money to be able to live. You have to have doctors and nurses. I
always think about this one. You think about the Shard, yeah? Multiple restaurants, lovely food. Where are those where's the lads, the cleaners going to live? Where are the waiters, the waitresses going to live? If they've got to travel in an hour, right?
Yeah.
And their first 2 hours they work is their train ticket in. Why would they work there
Yeah.
if they're at a loss?
It's exactly. It's mental, isn't it? It's
mental.
crazy. The thought process behind it, and I do understand the encouragement of business, and businesses should all be able to make profit. But then you look at the oil companies, and they're announcing multi-billion profits that not even they are expecting. Way beyond. It's like, well, hold on a minute, this isn't right. When small businesses up and down the country, it doesn't matter what business is in, and it's some sort of death grip of like. It's like, how is it? None of this is right. It's just become so disjointed, and it does become a political point, because these guys have been in power for 13 years, and we have never had an NHS as bad as it is. We've never had so many businesses closing because of whilst big corporations are making money. We've never had an education. So we got everybody on strike. It's just the amount of upset and unbalance there is between the people with money and the ones that are just trying to get through their daily lives in a way to survive and make sure that their kids are okay, and they get enough food on the table, and if they are ill, they can get seen by a doctor, and if they just the normal everyday standard life. You got a toothache, you can go, let's go to the dentist. It's not like now. It's like you won't be able to see the dentist for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's going to cost
2 or 3 weeks, probably 2 and 3 months.
It's just the world, the bigger outlook on society is very, very difficult. So that's why I get involved in it, because I get asked and I have a voice and I have an opinion, and it can always sound political, but it's not. It's about supporting. It's about trying to show, I understand, I come from that area, that background, I understand, and I do recognise the problems that people face, and it's not an easy thing to solve. It's not an easy thing. It's not an overnight success thing. But that world of politics and that world of just trying to put yourself in a place where you have a moral compass to trying to do things correctly is just where we should be. If we should be embracing of people shitting themselves and coming over on a fucking dinghy through the channel. You've fucking done it. Like, how terrifying.
I was a little bit longer than 27 miles.
Yeah, exactly. But if you are,
scary, mate. Yeah.
If you're a 9-year-old kid sat like, fuck it, where's our compassion gone for people? Like, now I do understand that some of them might be wrong uns, and I do understand. Like, but however, the bigger picture here is we're just fucking human beings, and we're all on one fucking planet. We should all be a little bit more compassion and kindness would go a lot further to make the world a much nicer place.
Let's go back to sort of restaurants, pubs. You made a programme, Saving Britain's Pubs.
Yeah.
Now, as the son of a former landlady, love a boozer.
Yeah.
Enjoy a boozer at the weekend. What I want to know, why did you want to make that show and show? Because pubs have been under attack.
They are massively, and there's a number of reasons. There's thousands of pubs closing every year. Okay, so it's what is the reason of that? And it was trying to showcase the different reasons. Some of it were the own personal landlords' position of what they do. The world has changed in the terms of from when you start working in a pub as a young kid to where we are now. People don't drink as much at lunchtimes. They don't. Even now, when you go out in the evening, the world is slightly different. It's not about drinking 8-10 pints. It might be 2 or 3 really well looked after beers. We've become about a lot of places about quality over volume, and that doesn't necessarily lead to monetary changes. Also, the way that things are taxed. A lot of pubs are owned by pub companies that are also essentially property companies without really an understanding of the value and the margins that pub landlords can make. So there's so many different reasons why pubs and pub culture, because we all love the idea of going on a bike ride on a Sunday to the local pub in the countryside and going there and having Sunday lunch, which is great. But unless you go on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's not going to be open because they can't make the money on a Sunday lunch. And going there for a cup of coffee on a Tuesday lunchtime and spending £3.50 is not going to keep that pub open. Yeah. There's so many different pubs get taxed hugely on alcohol, on rates. They're normally the rates that hospitality businesses are on are normally higher than retail. But retail is another issue that's being attacked as well. You look at our high streets, and that's because everyone's buying things online. As a society, we are changing. The one thing that we do miss is that we do love cultural interaction. We do love society where we mix. And a lot of those pubs, like a lot of estate pubs, are actually meeting places. They're social, they're hubs, they're networks, they're places where people hang out. They may be the place where the old guy that can afford 1 pint of beer a day goes and sits there at 11 a.m. and he might still be there until 5 because his flat's too cold. You know, they're very, very important. And if we keep stripping money out of them in lots of different ways, then they're not going to be around there to exist. But also the pub industry has to adapt and change. We do have to look at going, okay, well, people aren't drinking beer anymore, but maybe if we did really good coffees or non-alcoholic drinks, or maybe a little bit of a food offering, or maybe how do you adapt and change? And so it was much more that show was much more about a recognising of the cultural space that we are and how they're vitally important to us. Pubs are, there's nowhere else in the world that does them. That other people have lots of different.
Oh, the pubs in America are shit.
Yeah, but they also have a bar culture, which is different. So they have a bar culture where it has the sport on the telly and a pool table and whatever else, and they can be quite. They operate in the same sort of way, and but you might have bistros or trattorias or little tapa spaces or all over Europe that are different, or street food vendors that do taco shacks in Southern America or whatever. There's lots of things where people meet up that are hubs. Pubs have to adapt that it's not just about people going there to drink and get drunk now, or about people going and watch the football match. I mean, you have to try and make yourself a bit more adaptive to your community, collect them, bring it, make it that community meeting space. And what is it about? It's not now just about cheap pints of Australian lager that are fizzy and don't taste of anything. It's now about trying to create something. And as an industry, we're getting better at it, but there will be a lot of pub casualties before we come through the other side.
Yeah.
Due to so many different reasons, like pressures on the outside.
So I remember they sold the pub, my grandma and mum, because my granddad unfortunately passed away. And I remember thinking, so Enterprise owned, so it's a grade 2 listed pub in Hamble.
Yeah.
And before we sold anything, we used to have to pay them, I think, like 45, 50 grand in rent.
Yeah.
Yet we were tied with our beer.
Yeah.
We were one of the lucky ones, because a lot of places are soft drinks, beer, spirits, so they can charge whatever they want at the beer, and you have to buy it from them. And I just remember thinking, why would they want a pub to fail? That was we were a very successful pub as well.
These are the things. This is the difficult thing
because, like you said, property companies.
They're a property company. They're essentially property companies. They don't. Not many of them are still brewers. There's Green King is still a brewer that owns pubs that you can still be tied into the beer, but they have a slightly better understanding because they're a brewer. They get it. They kind of. They have an understanding, a better understanding.
Am I right in saying I love your concept where you got the butcher's shop in the pub? Is that a Green King? It's owned by Green King.
The lease is Green King. So is the Hand of Flowers. The Hand of Flowers is a Green King lease. The coach is our own, but we bought that from Enterprise, so that's mortgaged. And
that's a lovely pub, by the way. If anyone wants to go,
you have to make it. But their argument would be that you get cheaper rent, and that's made up by increased volume sales. But actually, by the time you look at it and you do a lot of research into it, that rent is pretty close to market value. Plus, now you're paying almost twice the price for beer. You're getting squeezed at every point. But again, a lot of those property companies that own pubs that are beer companies that they call themselves, or brewery co's, they're mortgaged. They're borrowed against the property. They need to pay those mortgages. They need to pay those mortgages by beer sales and by high rent. And then the moment it starts failing, I think they've got themselves into a really horrible situation, a circle where they can't get out because they can't afford to service the debt that they've raised for the property unless the landlords are selling beer. So it becomes this really horrible perpetual circle. And sometimes businesses and pub companies are very helpful and listen, and other times they're not, and some of them are better than others.
So, Tom, we were talking about the hardships that other people have faced and how you help them in that program overcome them. But what about in your own career as a landlord, business owner, or as a chef? That one of the biggest hardships you faced?
I think 2008 recession was very, very difficult. But the business was 3 years old, so it was still felt very immature and young. But I was 100% just in the Hand of Flowers, so whatever I touched and did was my making. You could kind of resolve it and spin it and make it work. And we got through that. That was very, very difficult. We had bailiffs on the door. I was working 48-hour shifts. I was trying to make everything like really, really, really hard to get through the other side. But that was me and Beth backs against the wall, working very hard to try and balance and bump everything and keep moving it and just relentlessly going. So 2008 was very, very difficult. The pandemic was very different because it wasn't just a recession. It was globally, no one knew what was happening.
Yeah.
There was no clear direction from government. So the people that you were looking for some form of help and guidance wasn't really, there wasn't really a definitive line of what was going to happen. Again, I get it. They didn't know. But at the same point, there was no real infrastructure. I think the furlough scheme worked. It worked
to
for
an
staff.
extent.
It worked for staff. It wasn't necessarily great for businesses because you still had national insurance to pay. You still had whatever. But it's fine. It was very helpful in terms of staff confidence. But as a business, you don't quite know, particularly if you're in a world of connection, whether musicians and bands will tell you the same, gallery spaces, hospitality, airline, travel, tourism, anything where you're connected to human beings, you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's going to happen the other side. So I think those have both been the most difficult parts, but in a very weird way, I thoroughly enjoyed the pandemic,
The challenge.
I would be here every day with Alan.
Loops back to what we said at the start.
Exactly. I was here with Alan, the managing director, every single day, sat in the office, sat here, working out what we're going to do. How's that going to work? What can we do? How do we come out the other side? Where have we got to cut costs? What do we spend on? How do we increase? What have we got to do? What do we do? Lean into the problem and solve it. We've got to get through this. So I hated it. I hated the responsibility. No, I didn't. I loved the responsibility, but I felt very conscious of people's lives, people that we employ, people that are our colleagues and friends that have got lives with mortgages and kids and whatever else that are looking at us we got to make the business work because where are they going? What's going to happen? They don't know. No one knows, but they look at you as a leader of going, how do we do this? So I relished the challenge. I really don't want to do it again. But
don't
I didn't.
Worry, same.
Yeah, but I didn't mind it. Okay, this is a fucking nightmare, but you're in it now. We're in it. Like you're 5 days in now. You're fucking in. We can't do anything about it. We can either just roll over, fucking die, or attack it, roll into it, attack it, and that's where we wanted, and that's what we wanted to do, and that's how we kept driving forward.
Mate, we've talked about hardship, but now let's look forward to something more positive.
Yeah.
So what's next for Tom Kerridge?
Like I said at the beginning, there's no ambition. There's no end point. There's no driving point of going, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to get. This is where I say yes to projects that I think are good fun. I say yes to projects that are. I don't mind taking risks. I don't mind like I just go, yeah, let's do it. Let's get on it. Let's attack that. Let's go and do this. And those for me are. That's the thing that's good fun. I just keep doing the same. We just keep doing the same. We just keep rolling and going. And I haven't got an exit strategy. I haven't got a way out. I haven't got a thing. I'm very lucky. 18 years old, went into hospitality, still 100% in it now. I don't know how to get out of it. I love it.
Yeah. No, awesome, mate. My final question, mate. Yeah. If you could go back and give that 18-year-old you a bit of advice, what would it be?
That moment where you put 350 quid's worth of foie gras in the oven and then went on a break, set a fucking timer, dickhead. Because when you fuck it all up, you get the biggest fucking bollocking you've ever had.
Makes me dropping a steak, so not too bad. Tom, mate, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate you coming on. Absolutely love this. I could have spoke to you all day. But guys, that is the end of today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please could you follow, like, and subscribe, as it really helps grow the podcast. Thank you for listening, Tom, mate.
Cheers,
That
Chief.
was awesome, mate. That was